Good morning students, welcome to SST So Simple tutorial. Today we will start Unit 3 Industrialization in the Colonies. In this lesson we will see how India, a British colony, gets industrialized, and we will restrict our discussion to textile industries only. Around 1750, that is the mid of 18th century, India was by far the world's largest producer of cotton textiles. Both silk and cotton goods from India dominated the international markets in textiles. Though cotton was produced by many countries, Indian textile was known for its fine quality and exquisite craftsmanship. Now, let us see how was foreign trade conducted during this period. Goods were transported both by land as well as sea. Armenians and Persian merchants carried bales of fine textiles on camel back from Punjab to Afghanistan, East Persia and Central Asia via the northwestern frontier, crossing the mountain passes and deserts. Bale means a large amount of something such as hay, dry grass, paper, wool or cloth that has been tied tightly together, that is gattar. You can see this map for better understanding. It shows the trade route that linked India to the world at the end of the 17th century. See the dotted lines used to show the land route we were referring to now. There was also a number of ports from which brisk trade was carried on. Important among them were Surat, Masulipatam, also called Masulipatnam or Machilipatnam, and Hooghly. Surat, on the river Tapti in Gujarat, was an important center of textiles trade and an important port under the Mughals. It connected India to the Gulf and Red Sea ports. Masulipatam, in the delta of river Krishna, is a port on the Coromandel coast. It was also known for production of dyed cotton cloth known as cheent in Europe. Masulipatam and Hooghly port in Bengal used to connect Southeast Asian ports. Now let us see how this system of production and export take place. Three important persons were involved in this network of export trade. They were supply merchants, brokers and shippers and export merchants. First, supply merchants. In this process, supply merchants was an important person who had an effective control over the process. Weavers prepared clothes in villages in inland regions. This supply merchant was the person who linked the port towns to the inland regions where the weavers made clothes. He used to visit the weavers. He gave them advance money. He finally procured the woven cloth from them and then finally carried them to the ports. The next in the chain was broker. This person worked as an intermediary between the shippers and supply merchants. These brokers negotiated the price and bought goods from the supply merchants. Finally, export merchants undertook the job of shipping and transporting goods to the destination countries where they were sold. This is how the system worked and the fine quality clothes reached the world markets. But by the 1750s, this network controlled by Indian merchants started to decline with the coming of European companies. This was mainly because of the fact that these European companies were gaining power. They secured a variety of concessions from local courts. They secured the monopoly rights to trade. This resulted in a decline of the old ports of Surat and Hooghly, through which local merchants had operated. Exports from these ports began to fall. For example, the gross value of trade that passed through Surat in the last years of the 17th century was 16 million rupees. This came down to 3 million rupees by the 1740s. Slowly, the local bankers went bankrupt. While Surat and Hooghly decayed, Bombay and Calcutta grew. European companies now controlled trade through these new ports. Goods were now being transported in European ships. This shift from the old ports to the new ones was an indicator of the growth of colonial power. How did these changes then affect the lives of weavers? After the Battle of Plassey, the East India Company started consolidating its power in India, but that did not immediately lead to decline in textile exports from India. Indian textile was still in demand in Europe then. The company was still keen on expanding its textile exports from India. Before establishing political power in Bengal and Karnataka, the East India Company was finding it difficult to get the supply at cheap rates. The reason for this was that all the European companies, that is the French East India Company, the Dutch East India Company, the Portuguese East India Company and English East India Company were interested in buying the same thing. We are discussing cotton textiles here, but it was also true for silk as well as spices like pepper, cloves, cardamom, cinnamon, etc. Competition among them pushed up the prices and this reduced the profits that could be earned. So after the Battle of Plassey, the company used its power to monopolize the control over Indian trade and production. They developed a system of management that eliminated competition, that controlled costs and ensured them a regular supply of cotton and silk goods. So what did they do? First, they tried to eliminate existing traders and brokers connected with the cloth trade and established a direct control over the weavers. To do this, they appointed a paid servant called Gomasthas to supervise weavers, to collect supplies and examine the quality of cloth. Secondly, they prevented weavers from dealing with other buyers. They started the system of advances. Once an order was given, they were given loans to buy the raw materials for the production. Once advance was accepted by the weavers could not sell the cloth to any other buyer. They had to hand over the produce to Gomasthas only. Students, there were reports of clashes between weavers and Gomasthas in many villages. In fact, the Gomasthas took over the role what the supply merchants did before. But there was a big difference. The supply merchants actually belonged to their villages. He had a very close relationship with them. He looked after their needs. He used to help them in the times of crisis. In contrast, the Gomasthas were the outsider. They had no social link with the village. Therefore, they acted arrogantly. They punished the weaver for delay in supplies. They often beat them. So students, in this new system, the weavers were the worst sufferers. Their incomes had fallen. They lost their freedom. They were forced to sell their produce to the company only. Being the monopoly procurer, the company paid very low price for the products. In many places, the weavers revolted against the company and its officials. They were leading a life of misery. Many of them closed down their production units and became agricultural laborers for subsistence. Let us see what we have in the next subunit 3.3 Manchester comes to India. Students, so far we saw that in the new system of advances and Gomasthas, the life of weavers became miserable. Now we will see that their problems did not end here. They were faced with new types of problems. As cotton industries developed in England, industrial groups began worrying about imports from other countries. They pressurized the government to impose import duties on cotton textiles so that Manchester goods could sell in Britain without facing any competition from outside. That is why British government passed Calico Act in 1720. which you have already read in class 8. The Calico Act banned the import of most cotton textiles into England, followed by the restriction of sale of most cotton textiles. At the same time, industrialists persuaded the East India Company to sell British manufactures in Indian market as well. Thus, exports of British cotton goods increased dramatically in the early 19th century. At the end of the 18th century, there had been virtually no import of cotton piece goods into India, but by 1850, cotton piece goods constituted over 31% of the value of Indian imports, and the figure was more than 50%. Cotton weavers thus faced two problems at the same time. One, their export, that means the British market, collapsed, and two, their local markets, that means the Indian market, shrank, which was glutted with Manchester imports. Since the British goods were produced by machines, they were cheap. As a result, our weavers could not compete with them. By the 1850s, reports from most weaving regions of India narrated stories of decline, despair, and disappointment. By the 1860s, weavers faced a new problem. They could not get sufficient supply of raw cotton of good quality. Actually, before the 1860s, 3/4 of raw cotton came to Britain from America. When the American Civil War broke out in 1861, the cotton supplies from America to Britain were cut off. Thus, there was a wave of panic in British industries. So, Britain turned towards India. Raw cotton exports from India increased. Consequently, the prices of raw cotton shot up. This was again a big problem for the weavers in India. They started facing problem in getting the supplies, and they were forced to buy raw cotton at exorbitant high prices. Then, by the end of 19th century, weavers and other craftspeople faced yet another problem. Factories were set up in India. These factories began production, thus flooding the market with machine-made goods. Thus, we can conclude that weavers in India were faced with a number of problems such as vanishing export markets, shrinking domestic markets, and non-availability of raw materials. Thus, we finish the topic planned for today. I hope you must have understood the topic. Let us see the probable questions and board questions from this topic now. 1. Name the sea routes that connected India with other Asian regions. 2. The port of Surat declined by the end of 18th century. Explain. This is a NCERT textbook question. 3. How were Indian imports affected after the European companies took control of trade in India? 4. Who were the Gomasthas? 5. Explain any three problems faced by Indian weavers by the turn of the 19th century. This was a 3 marks question in 2009. You will see the same question is asked again in 2018. Describe any 3 major problems faced by Indian cotton weavers in 19th century. 3 marks 2018. In the next class, we will move further and see the setting up of factories in India. Till then, keep reading and have a nice time. Thank you.